Hey, what's up, Nerd fam? This is your boy Gershon. I want to welcome you to Enter the Nerd. Today, we're talking about Superman. Now, before we really get into the review of this movie, here's some things that I really want to say beforehand. Number one, my thought process is always comic first because that's where these characters originate from. But it's not exclusively that, because even if they change certain things from comics, it can still be acceptable, entertaining, and even downright nuanced. But, and then maybe even sometimes better in rare cases, especially with what's going on now. But I always want these movies and adaptations, shows, whatever, to be successful, because the better they are, the more people who don't read comics will likely get into them. We can have more conversations, and more of the stuff that I got a chance to really love and grow up with will be shared with a whole bunch of other people who may not have been familiar with it. Now, that being said, before this movie came out, I saw obviously a lot of the promotional material, the posters, and then obviously the trailers, as we all did. And that stuff, when I first saw it, made me go, this seems a lot like a Superman movie with the James Gunn filter on it, which would be, Guardians of the Galaxy or Suicide Squad. And then I noticed that there were a lot of characters, and I felt, you know what, this is gonna be pretty busy. I know it's a Superman movie, but I'm seeing a lot of other stuff. And then I heard reports before this movie came out, those characters weren't gonna be in there too much, they just made very short appearances, blah, blah, blah. This is still gonna have that focus. And obviously, the costume was a very, very big point of contention for people, because a lot of people prefer Man of Steel, the Man of Steel costume that Henry Cavill wore, even Brandon Routh's to an extent, and even some other ones they feel like they could have chosen from the comic that would have been better on screen. Gotcha. And I'm one of those people who also didn't really dig the costume. Now, after watching this movie, was it too busy? Did it seem like a Suicide Squad filter on top of, or James Gunn filter on top of a Superman movie? Was he really not the center of it? Was the costume good? Well, here are the answers to those questions. Firstly, unfortunately, it is too busy, and those characters didn't just come on screen for a little bit and leave. Were they there for the entire runtime? No, but they were there for a significant portion, and they played quite a bit of a part on there, to the point where Superman quite literally took a back seat at times. I'll even go as far as Superman wasn't necessarily needed to even save the day, as far as, wait, hold on. Spoiler alert. I can't believe I didn't say that before, but spoiler before we go on. There's a lot of spoilers here, spoilers. But yes, as far as saving the day, they didn't necessarily need him. Mr. Terrific was there for that, even for the final battle scene with Baravia and Jarhanpur. I think I'm saying that right. That was, what's it called? Hawk Girl and Guy Gardner. They were all there for that. He wasn't really necessary. He was kind of the added sidekick, just kind of the muscle. Now, I'm glad they showed him saving some people as well, which is good, because some superhero movies always forget that the main thing that a superhero is supposed to do is save people, and you get that. But when it comes to the fraction of time, this doesn't seem like a Superman movie. Superman and Friends, or a mini Justice League kind of thing, but this doesn't seem like it's focused mainly on superhero. Now, he's a thread that runs through it, but there are parts that he isn't really needed for. But let's just hone in on Superman. Number one, I believe David Cornsweet is an amazing actor as far as what you're supposed to be for Superman. He looks like Superman, and I understand what they were trying to do as far as the type of Superman it is. Young, and someone who was just trying to find his way and be good. However, this Superman still wasn't the only one front and center. As a matter of fact, Mr. Terrific, as I mentioned before, had more iconic moments in this than Superman did. Lois Lane is a very well-developed character in this movie, which is great. But once again, what happened to Clark? Clark is always supposed to be the real guy, and Superman is supposed to kind of be the mask, because he grew up as Clark. Superman is technically new in his life. And according to this, he's only been Superman for 3 years. So we should see much more development with Clark than we should with Superman, right? Even that little interview they did when she's kind of softballing him questions, watching him react that way, I guess some people would think it makes sense because of how his age is, but he's 30, not 22, he's 30, and he still seems very sporadic for someone like that. I don't know, maybe this is normal for someone of a certain age. I don't know. I don't hang around anybody who acts like that. Either way, beyond that, when it comes to his role in the entire movie or the moments that he had, a lot of the gravity didn't get a chance to sit because James Gunn loves his humor. And you saw it sprinkled in there. It doesn't mean that a Superman movie has to be deadpan. However, there was a lot of humor that fits a Guardians of the Galaxy or a Suicide Squad that didn't fit here. It just didn't. When it came to the Crypto Dog, he was just, honestly, he could have beat a lot of the villains they have going there. All those little henchmen. Lex, as far as him, we understand his motivation. He's just Superman's #1 hater. Superman never actually did anything wrong. He just existed to the point where he hates metahumans, but he creates more metahumans to be able to fight him because he's mad that Superman became a symbol. And then you find out that he orchestrated the entire conflict between those two nations just so he can lead up to a point where he can convince the American government to be able to kill him, which doesn't make sense because he could have just tried to kill him and blamed it on something else. If he was that smart to begin with, he could have just killed him and blamed it on something, and just it seemed very contrived and unnecessary at the same time, right? Let's discuss how he went to convince people that Superman wasn't a good guy. There's this recording that shows up in the Fortress of Solitude that him and his people, him, Ultraman, and the engineer kill all the robots. They destroy all of them, which miraculously they repair themselves even though we saw them die. Either way, they find this recording of the parents that Superman himself has been watching, which has been driving him, saying, hey, take care of the planet, they need you, blah, blah. And then there's a missing part of it, which apparently has the parents telling Superman that he has to pretty much, be a Viltrumite. Spread your seed everywhere. These people are idiots. They're dumb. Do what you gotta do and show no mercy. They say that. They translate the rest. And they show this to the rest of the world. And after he saves them from this gigantic kaiju, they all go, well, I know you just saved us, but fuck him from this unverified video from this dude named Lex Luthor, who we know actually has an axe to grind with him and has a ton of reason to give us doctored images this entire time. But we're just going to believe him even though he just saved our lives in front of us less than 5 minutes ago. Stupid. So dumb. But in case you didn't miss that part, remember, they made his parents pretty much evil. Go over there and conquer. First off, how would they even know that he could do that? Because remember, in Krypton, they don't have those powers. They only have it over here. So how did they know? And if they knew that, they probably would have been over here already. But remember, the Kryptonians usually don't find out until they're here, right? Then, when Lex actually does capture him, use it with the help of Metamorpho, transforming his arm into kryptonite, because apparently there isn't any kryptonite on the planet. But how does he know about the kryptonite? Whatever. We don't know, who else was he fighting with that? Whatever. He could have killed Superman there, but instead he's like, I'm just gonna hold you there, I'm gonna find some other people to kill, like maybe Clark, because apparently he doesn't know that Superman is Clark. So many things that don't actually make sense in this movie. Not just as a Superman movie, because make no mistake, this is a bad Superman movie because it doesn't focus on him, it doesn't do him justice, and it gives a lot of other people shine. Now, I'm glad that it introduced somebody like Mr. Terrific, but it's not a Mr. Terrific movie. And like I said, they got way more shine. But because of how big this event was, and them, I think they showed how Gotham is pretty much right there next to Metropolis. And they said that Batman has actually, he's older. This is what James Gunn said before the film came out. He's older, he's already been Batman. it makes you wonder why somebody like Batman wasn't here. Why didn't he show up? Because he's technically already established. Wouldn't he have come over here to see what's going on? I don't know. It kind of makes sense. Doesn't mean every metahuman has to show up, but I think if Batman is in a neighboring city, it would make sense for him to come through and see what's up, even if it was a brief cameo, right? Speaking of brief cameos, we see Supergirl calling Superman a bitch, right? She's drunk apparently. Crypto was her dog. They obviously filmed that. They probably just added that in because they already finished filming. I think they're almost done filming. Just so you can kind of get a sneak peek. But she's already got a suit. So has she been on this planet operating? And if she has been operating, why wasn't she mentioned? Why was it only Superman? Shouldn't Luthor be like, oh, I'm tired of these Kryptonians? Like, was she just hiding out? These are real questions that now we have to ask. This is the first film of this new universe. And it started off so messy that now all the films following it are going to have to answer a lot of questions here that I don't think that it's not going to be easy to be able to do. But did it set up Superman really well for the rest of the universe? Some people who are watching it, the kids and people who just don't know anything, they're not going to have a problem with it. And I don't blame you for not having a problem with it. But people who actually are very familiar with the character from the comic and understand that this is supposed to be the tentpole of the DC universe, one of the tentpoles at least, I don't think this did him very good justice. And I think James Gunn was so interested in his interpretation and funneling Superman into that rather than giving us a version of the character that most people not only know, but is most palatable to most people who have read it and is good to start. Remember, he said he didn't want an origin story. That's fine. You want a universe that has some metahumans in it. Perfect. But those metahumans shouldn't take up such a large part of the plot point and solve a lot of the problems that he doesn't. There's actually a point where he sits down and he's talking to Lois and there's like a monster in the background and he's not helping them. They said he's the strongest metahuman. Why isn't he helping them out there? Oh, they got it. They were struggling out there, clearly. How did I forget Ultraman, right? Ultraman, they cloned him with a strand of hair, like the Superman villain from the movie, right? And they're controlling him like a Tekken character using a command list because apparently Lex has been watching Superman so much that he can just put in commands like a fighting game and control him that way. And he is so inept and dumb that this guy can't fight even though he's apparently supposed to be a little bit more powerful than Superman. And Superman does what? He kills him. Okay. I guess this one doesn't have that. You can't all of a sudden make him have a no-kill rule unless something... This can be very weird if he all of a sudden has that because he didn't have that here. And even Hawkgirl killing the president of Baravia, wouldn't that cause a conflict? She just killed their leader. That seems kind of strange, right? A lot of weird things happen in this movie with the characters, specifically the main metahumans as well as Superman. So, is this a good Superman movie? No. And one could argue that it's just a bad movie in general because there's a lot of things within the movie that just don't make sense. And I do worry about the rest of the DCEU going forward. But maybe James Gunn has other directors that can make different movies better. But now he has to address a lot of things and precedents that this film sets. Let me know what you think about it. Did you love this movie? I definitely didn't. This wouldn't be what I would have wanted. I wasn't a huge fan of the Snyder verse either. But I think there were certain things. There was definitely, Man of Steel was definitely a much better start in platform than this was. Let me know in the comments, and until then, enter the nerd.